The phone rang at exactly 9:17 a.m., shattering the peaceful morning Victoria and Mackenzie had been sharing over coffee in their small Portland apartment. "I'm sorry, but we have to cancel your booking," the voice on the other end said flatly. "The venue is no longer available for your event." Victoria's hand trembled as she set the mug down, her eyes meeting Mackenzie's in instant panic. Just 3 weeks before their wedding, the dream location they had poured their savings into was gone, and with it, any sense of control they thought they had over their future. "This can't be happening," Mackenzie whispered, her voice breaking as she grabbed the phone from Victoria's hand. "We signed a contract. You can't just back out like this." The woman on the line, the assistant to the landowner, repeated the message with cold professionalism before hanging up. The two women sat in silence for what felt like hours, the weight of the news pressing down on them like a physical force. Victoria, with her dark hair tied back in a loose ponytail and her kind brown eyes now filled with tears, had always been the planner, the one who believed that if they followed the rules and did everything right, life would reward them. Mackenzie, blonde and fiery with a tattoo peeking from her sleeve, was the one who pushed them to be true to themselves no matter what. Their story had started 5 years earlier at a charity event in Seattle where Victoria was volunteering for her church group, and Mackenzie was there as a graphic designer for the nonprofit. What began as polite conversation over coffee had grown into a deep connection that neither could deny. When Victoria finally admitted her feelings, it came with months of internal torment, praying for guidance, questioning everything her conservative upbringing had taught her about sin and salvation. Mackenzie had been patient, understanding the battle Victoria fought between her heart and her faith. Their proposal had been simple: a hike in the Oregon mountains where Mackenzie got down on one knee with a simple ring. Now all that joy seemed threatened by this sudden cancellation. They spent the next hour calling the venue repeatedly, demanding an explanation, but the assistant only repeated that the owner, Mrs. Eleanor Hargrove, had made the decision personally. No further details. Mackenzie slammed the phone down, her cheeks flushed with anger. "This is discrimination, plain and simple. We can fight this. We have rights under the law." Victoria nodded slowly, but inside a familiar knot tightened in her chest, the same knot that had formed the first time her mother had cried after learning about Mackenzie. Was this God testing her? Was the cancellation a gentle warning to turn back before it was too late? She pushed the thought away, but it lingered like smoke after a candle is blown out. By afternoon they were in the car, driving the 2 hours to the lakeside estate in rural Washington. The property was everything they had dreamed. Rolling green lawns sloping to the water, an old white barn converted into a reception hall with string lights ready to be hung, and wildflowers lining the path where they had imagined walking hand in hand. As they pulled up, Victoria's stomach twisted. The booked sign was still posted, yet their names had been erased. Mrs. Hargrove, a woman in her 60s with silver hair pulled into a tight bun and a cross necklace glinting at her throat, met them at the porch steps. Her face was kind but resolute. "I'm afraid I can't go through with this," she said without preamble. "My conscience won't allow it." Victoria felt the words like a slap. "Because we're two women?" she asked, her voice quieter than she intended. Mrs. Hargrove did not flinch. "Marriage is between a man and a woman in the eyes of the Lord. I've prayed on this, and I cannot lend my property to something I believe goes against His word." Mackenzie stepped forward, her hands clenched. "We're not asking you to approve. We're asking you to honor a signed contract. This is our life, not some abstract sin." The conversation stretched into the late afternoon, voices rising and falling like waves on the nearby lake. Victoria found herself caught between them, nodding at Mackenzie's points about equality and love while feeling the old scriptures echo in her mind, the ones her father had read at dinner every night growing up. When they finally drove away, the sun was setting over the water, and Victoria's phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "Heard about the venue, honey. Maybe it's a sign. Come home this weekend. We can pray together." The real battle had only just begun. Victoria stared out the window, wondering how many more signs she would have to ignore before she lost herself completely. The next morning the apartment felt smaller, the walls closing in with unanswered questions. Mackenzie brewed fresh coffee while Victoria sat at the kitchen table scrolling through emails from the venue's lawyer. Polite but firm, citing a clause about moral compatibility, buried in the fine print. They can't do this, Mackenzie insisted, sliding a mug across the table. We'll get another lawyer. We'll go public if we have to. Victoria sipped the coffee, tasting nothing. She loved Mackenzie's fire, the way she refused to shrink, but part of her wondered if fighting would only make the pain worse. Her own family was already fracturing. Her brother, a youth pastor, had called last night to say he understood Mrs. Hargrove's stance even if he didn't fully agree. It's not hate, Vic, he had said gently. It's conviction. The words had stung more than any outright rejection. By noon, Victoria's mother arrived unannounced, suitcase in hand, eyes red from the long drive. I couldn't stay away, she said, pulling Victoria into a hug that felt both comforting and suffocating. They sat in the living room while Mackenzie hovered in the doorway, arms crossed. The conversation started softly, memories of Victoria's childhood church picnics, her mother's pride when she taught Sunday school, then shifted. I'm scared for your soul, baby, her mother whispered. The Bible is clear. I don't want you to spend eternity separated from us. Mackenzie's voice cut in, steady but strained. Love is love, Mrs. Reynolds. The God I believe in doesn't condemn people for who they are. Victoria's mother turned to her with genuine sorrow. I'm not condemning. I'm begging you to see the path that leads home. Victoria sat between them, heart-splitting. She saw her mother's fear as real love, the same love that had bandaged scraped knees and stayed up through teenage heartbreaks. Yet she felt Mackenzie's hand reach for hers under the table, warm and certain. The only truth that had ever felt like grace. That evening they drove to a quiet diner to escape the apartment's tension. Over plates of untouched pancakes, Victoria tried to explain the war inside her. I love you, Mac, more than anything. But when I hear Mom quote those verses, I remember every prayer I prayed begging God to change me. Mackenzie's eyes softened. I know. I've watched you cry in the shower when you think I'm asleep. But running back to that fear isn't love, it's survival. The debate stretched late into the night back home. Voices low to avoid disturbing neighbors. Victoria's mother quoted Corinthians. Mackenzie countered with stories of same-sex couples raising kind, faithful children. No one raised their voice. Yet every word landed like a stone in still water. Victoria lay awake afterward, Mackenzie's arm draped across her waist, wondering if choosing love meant losing the only family she had ever known. The cancellation was no longer just about a venue. It had become the mirror forcing every buried doubt into the light. By morning they had decided to fight legally, but Victoria's heart already felt the first cracks of inevitable loss. 987 words. The lawyer's office smelled of old paper and fresh coffee. The clause is vague, he said, flipping pages, but enforceable if they claim religious exemption. We can challenge it, but it'll take months and cost thousands. Mackenzie gripped Victoria's knee under the table. We'll find the money. Victoria nodded, but her mind drifted to the savings they had set aside for a honeymoon in Hawaii. Money now earmarked for court fees. Outside, rain streaked the windows of downtown Portland, mirroring the storm building inside her. That afternoon they visited Mrs. Hargrove again, this time with printed copies of the contract. The older woman invited them onto the porch, offering iced tea as if they were old friends. I didn't cancel lightly, she said quietly. I've seen what happens when families fracture over this. My own sister, she stopped, eyes distant. Victoria leaned forward. Your sister? Mrs. Hargrove shook her head. Not today. But know that my decision comes from pain, not hate. The words hung between them, hinting at layers they had not yet uncovered. Back home, Victoria's brother arrived with their father, both in button-down shirts fresh from a church meeting. The four of them, plus Mackenzie and Victoria's mother, crowded the living room. We're not here to judge, her father said, voice steady. We're here because we love you. The discussion lasted 3 hours. Her brother spoke of community and the comfort of tradition. Mackenzie spoke of the isolation she had felt before meeting Victoria. Victoria tried to bridge the gap, telling them how Mackenzie had taught her to pray differently. Not for change but for courage. Tears flowed freely. Her mother hugged her tightly. I would rather lose you to heaven than keep you in what I believe is sin. Mackenzie left the room for air, fists clenched, yet later she admitted to Victoria in bed. Your mom's fear is real. I see it. I just wish it didn't cost us everything. Victoria lay staring at the ceiling, the weight of responsibility settling on her chest. Every choice now hurt someone she loved. The legal battle loomed, but the emotional one was already tearing her in two. That night she dreamed of the lakeside venue empty under gray skies, and woke with the realization that some losses could never be restored. Discovery began with a single newspaper clipping Mackenzie found while searching public records for the property. Dated 23 years earlier, it showed a young woman named Lydia Hargrove smiling beside her sister Eleanor at a church picnic. The article mentioned Lydia's tragic passing at 24. Further digging revealed Lydia had left home after coming out as lesbian, lived briefly in Seattle, then took her own life. Mrs. Hargrove had never spoken of it publicly. When they confronted her gently at the venue the next week, the older woman's shoulders slumped. "I canceled your booking because I saw the same pain coming for both of you," she confessed, voice thick. "Victoria's family reminds me of mine. I thought if I stopped the wedding, I could spare you the heartbreak I caused my sister by staying silent." The revelation landed like thunder. Mackenzie's anger softened into stunned silence. Victoria felt tears rise, not of victory but of shared grief. "You thought you were protecting us?" she asked softly. Mrs. Hargrove nodded. "I was wrong. My fear hurt more than it helped." The conversation stretched into evening, Mrs. Hargrove sharing stories of Lydia's laughter, her faith, and the family's refusal to bend. No one was the villain. Everyone had acted from love twisted by conviction. Word spread through Victoria's family. Her mother called voice shaking. "If even Mrs. Hargrove regrets her silence, maybe I've been too rigid." Yet she could not fully retract her beliefs. "I still fear for you, but I see your pain too." Mackenzie and Victoria spent long nights talking, weighing whether to accept an alternative venue or keep fighting. Internal conflict peaked when Victoria's brother preached a sermon on grace that seemed aimed at them, gentle, not condemning, yet still drawing the line. Mackenzie felt the sting of conditional love. Victoria felt the ache of divided loyalties. They drove back to the lake one last time, walking the grounds where their ceremony should have been. Mrs. Hargrove met them with paperwork. "I'm reinstating the contract," she said. "Not because I've changed my theology but because I've changed my heart. You deserve a chance to choose without my interference." The gesture was kind, yet it forced new questions. Accepting meant acknowledging everyone's good intentions had still caused damage. Walking away meant losing the dream entirely. Victoria held Mackenzie's hand as the sun dipped below the water, feeling the heavy responsibility of every future decision. The truth had flipped the situation, but the cost remained painfully real. The reinstatement brought temporary relief, but the real battle moved inward. Victoria's family attended a small gathering at the venue to show support, yet conversations remained guarded. Her mother hugged Mackenzie stiffly, whispering prayers under her breath. Mackenzie smiled through it, but later in their hotel room she broke down. "I feel like I'm stealing you from them." Victoria pulled her close. "You're not stealing anything. I'm choosing us. But it hurts knowing they're grieving the daughter they thought they had." The week before the wedding, Victoria met her mother alone at a park near the venue. They sat on a bench watching ducks on the lake. "I've prayed every night," her mother said. "I see your love for Mackenzie is real. I just don't know how to reconcile it with what I've believed my whole life." Victoria took her hand. "I don't need you to reconcile it today. I just need you to know I'm still your daughter." Tears fell freely. No easy resolution came, only the quiet acknowledgement that some bridges would remain half-built. Mackenzie's family flew in, full of hugs and excitement, highlighting the contrast. Victoria watched them laugh and felt both grateful and envious. The night before the ceremony, the two women walked the lakeside path alone. "Whatever happens tomorrow," Mackenzie said, "we've already won by choosing each other honestly." Victoria nodded, yet the weight of her mother's unsaid prayers pressed on her. The next morning dawned clear and bright. Guests filled the white chairs. Mrs. Hargrove stood at the back, nodding once in quiet blessing. Victoria walked down the aisle on her father's arm. He had chosen to give her away despite his reservations, and saw her mother dabbing tears in the front row. The vows were simple, heartfelt, promising love through every storm. When they kissed, applause rose, but Victoria caught her mother's eyes and saw both pride and sorrow. The reception was beautiful, yet threaded with unspoken goodbyes. Victoria danced with her brother, who whispered, "I'm proud of you even if I don't fully understand." The celebration ended with hugs that felt final in ways no one wanted to name. They had their wedding, but the family they once knew had changed forever. Months later, life settled into a new rhythm. Victoria taught English at the same high school. Mackenzie's photography business grew. They bought a small house with a garden where they planted flowers from the venue. Yet quiet moments revealed the scars. Victoria's weekly calls with her mother grew shorter, filled with careful small talk and long silences. Mackenzie noticed the way Victoria still opened her childhood Bible some nights, not to condemn, but to remember. "I don't regret us," Victoria told her one evening on the porch, "but I regret the pain I caused them." Mackenzie kissed her forehead. "We didn't cause it alone. Everyone chose their path, including your family." Mrs. Hargrove sent a Christmas card with a note. "Lydia would have been happy for you both. Thank you for teaching an old woman about grace." The words brought healing, yet also underscored the irreversible losses. One spring afternoon, Victoria visited her parents alone. Her mother set out tea and sat across the kitchen table. "I still pray for you every day," she said softly. "Not to change you, but to keep you safe." Victoria smiled through tears. "I pray for you too, Mom, that you find peace with who I am." They hugged for a long time, neither fully releasing the other. Driving home, Victoria realized acceptance was not victory. It was learning to carry the weight of choices with open hands. She and Mackenzie had gained each other fully, but they had lost the illusion of uncomplicated family love. The journey had not ended in triumph, but in the quiet courage of living with consequences. On their first anniversary, they returned to the lakeside venue for a quiet picnic. Mrs. Hargrove waved from the porch. As they watched the sun set over the water, Victoria turned to Mackenzie. "We did the best we could with what we knew." Mackenzie squeezed her hand. "And we'll keep doing better every day." Was Victoria right to choose her authentic love with Mackenzie even though it meant causing her family profound, lasting pain? Or was she wrong to turn her back on the religious traditions that had given her life its earliest meaning?